Hello and welcome along to the RTÉ Rugby podcast. It's our second pod of week 3 in the Autumn Nation series. On Tuesday, I had Johnny Holland and Johnny Murphy on to recap Ireland's 22-19 win against Argentina last Friday. Now, Bernard Jackman is with me as we start to look ahead to the visit of Fiji this Saturday. Bernard, how are you today?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Excited by this Irish team. I'd heard a rumor during the week that Gus McCarthy was starting and Sam. So it's great to see two youngsters get a start in a test game. Obviously, it's Gus's first cap, but for Sam to get a start and lots of experience and interesting selections alongside both of them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it now.
Absolutely, and I'm most excited about getting back to Saturday matches. My week had been the last 2 weeks, my routine had been completely thrown off. I didn't know whether I was coming or going. But anyway, we'll get right into it. The team news is in, as I said, 7 changes from last week's win against Argentina. And as Bernard mentioned, 2 debuts, Cormac Izuchukwu and Gus McCarthy. So Izuchukwu comes in at blindside flanker, James Ryan drops out of the starting team, and Tadhg Beirne goes into the second row. McCarthy comes in at hooker. Ronan Kelleher moves to the bench. Sam Prendergast gets his first start at out half. Jack Crowley is rested and Kieran Frawley's on the bench. Craig Casey is in for Jamison Gibson Park at scrum half. Jacob Stockdale for James Lowe on the left wing. And in the centre, Bundy Aki comes in for Gary Ringrose, with Robbie Henshaw moving out to the number 13 jersey. And then Jamie Osborne starts at fullback. His third fullback start and 5th cap. Hugo Keenan is given the week off. Bernard, your initial thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, look, he's freshened it up. I probably good feeling. I thought he could be even more radical. I just don't know what the benefit of Caelan playing 4 games in a row. Andrew Porter, likewise. But look, I can see he wants. In fairness, I can see the counter argument he wants to give the likes of Jamie Osborne or Stockdale, who's getting a chance after a while in the windowless. Sam and Craig at 9 and 10. Some stability, some structure around him, and
Yeah.
obviously Gus is coming into what could easily be an Irish front five. I know
Yeah.
Tyga's first choice tight end, but it's so that's from that point of view, I can see the logic. I'm just looking at player management and looking at some of those players who will have to go into Europe straight away after the Australian test. So it's quite a tough 5 or 6 week period for them. But look, that's what it is. The Irish system finds breaks for them elsewhere. But yeah, I like the squad. I like Cormac Izuchukwu getting on. I had thought maybe Cian Healy would start and lead out the team, but obviously they're saving that for next week, which is going to be a special occasion for
And
150.
there's and even like for Cian Healy next week, there's actually, I think we all actually assumed he probably was going to start this
Yeah.
week, and that's the way it was going to work out. But I suppose there's a nice symmetry to it next week if he makes the record breaking appearance against Australia, who he made his debut against all
Yeah.
those years ago.
It's amazing, isn't it? How and I look at Farrell is into that kind of stuff. He
Yeah.
actually would have looked at that, and he does try and really honor players who achieve significant milestones. So yeah, Frawley's back obviously, and I'm actually really fascinated to see his reaction when he gets on. To what was just a blip, it was a
Mm.
bad blip, but it was a blip for a very short period of time in a game where Ireland were struggling to impose themselves. So I wouldn't write him off. Jack Crowley gets weekend off, and I think that's no harm as well for him to freshen up. Tom O'Toole covering loosehead.
Yeah, we'll get
Is that
we'll
yeah,
get deep into that a little bit later on.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay, and then the rest of it, Henderson back in.
Yeah.
Izuchukwu is exciting as well. Like that back row, with him in there. I'm excited to see him and his physicality and his athleticism will be needed because Fiji got massive confidence out of that win against Wales, and I know the form of that took a step back obviously after Wales's defeat to Australia, but there's plenty of quality in that Fijian side, and
Mm.
lots of power, lots of muscle. So yeah, no, it's going to be a good test game. I think. Yeah, I think Ireland. I expect Ireland, even though there's lots of changes, to actually be better for a longer period than they were against Argentina. And Sam obviously has has a big role to play in getting that attacking game going.
Yeah, and like as you said there, like I'd say a lot of other people as well have kind of been wondering, could there have been another couple of changes in there? As you pointed out, like, does Caelan Doris have to play every single game? I was doing a piece earlier in the week on him, and I think he's now played 38 games in a row for Ireland and started 37 of them. Basically, but
Yeah.
basically since the games against Japan in the summer of 2021, he has played every single match for Ireland since then and has started all but one. So, at what point does someone else get a run at number 8? But then the flip side of it as well is if you're going to be having Cormac Izuchukwu coming in, it's a nice way to bring him in to have him in a back row with Caelan Doris and Josh van der Fleer. And similarly with Gus McCarthy in at hooker, he's got some great stability there with Andrew Porter and Finlay Bealham, two good experienced players alongside him. Um, and then even Sam Prendergast starting at out half. I'm sure he'll be relieved at times on Saturday afternoon having Bundy Aki outside him when Josh Tuisova's running straight down his channel for the guts of however long he's on the pitch.
Mm. Yeah, I actually looking at that team. Um, I actually think he'd be better suited having Frawley alongside him a little bit at centre.
Right.
No, and that's not saying that Frawley is a better centre than Bundy or Robbie. But we are kind of struggling for a second playmaker. It's not really something that Jamie Osborne has shown yet to be a part of his game. As I said, Mac said before, Mac kind of plays that role for Ireland, but it's very much as first receiver, where I think Ireland potentially could do it having someone out the back of the next pod or someone to be a better distributor as first receiver. So Sam or Jack or Frawley, if they're playing 10, can get a little bit wider just to get away from the massive collisions that we'd have if we play direct against Fiji, who probably will have Tuisova and Nakalavu in the center and so I'd be trying to get into a little bit wider channels and maybe Frawley he might not come on at 10, he might end coming on a fullback or center, but could be a second playmaker, a second set of eyes and ears for Sam. It's gonna be just interesting. Like there's lots of talk about Sam and like he is an exciting young player, but I'm very much of the opinion that if you praise Sam, you're not knocking Kieran or Jack. But some people seem to think that you have to nail your colours to the mast to one of them. I think we've got 3 very talented young 10s, and we're in a great position. And obviously now we got to just try and manage them and mind them and see who comes out on top. And that may be the best 10 to actually get Ireland going rather than the best individual. And I've been looking back at the England games under Marcus Smith, and it's a bit mad, but because Marcus himself has been so good. But I'm looking at England and I'm going, would England have won some of those last 5 tests without Marcus there, or Marcus coming off the bench? And I'm not saying the lads are like Marcus Smith or anything like that, but it's just that whole thing about Ireland are such a team that rely on an orchestrator, a conductor playing the right tunes, and bringing other people into the game. That it may not necessarily be the best 10. It may be whoever makes everybody else perform better, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely get what you're saying there, where like it doesn't have to necessarily be the most skillful individual
Yes.
out there. It's the person that gets the most out of all those around him as well. And I suppose that's probably the way our rugby philosophy goes, where the out half is so important to our kind of game. Whereas obviously in France, it's
Yeah.
traditionally been the scrum halves have run the show there as well. What's important, obviously, this weekend is making sure Sam Prendergast gets in and out of the game unscathed, because I was actually looking back at the last 2 games between Ireland and Fiji, and poor Joey Carberry started both of them. And in the one in 2017, he fractures his arm, and 2 years ago he gets knocked out with a red card tackling. That's actually Jack Crowley coming on for his debut in the second half of that. So hopefully Sam Prendergast manages to get through it all right. And another thing you actually pointed out there as well, which kind of I think has had to be said over the last few days, that if you are praising one player, you're not dismissing
Yeah.
another or saying that, well, if you say Jack Crowley should be playing this weekend, it's not because you think Sam Prendergast is useless and shouldn't be anywhere near an Ireland squad. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
So, but have you noticed? I've noticed that narrative, and
yeah.
that you have to be 100% behind one, or if you mention one as being good, then the others are crap. It's I don't see that at all. And I think I like the Munster Leinster rivalry. Seems to be there's a bit of a bite back to it, but when it comes to Ireland and Irish players, we just need to be a little bit more reasonable, I think. In our, it's very difficult to be an international 10, particularly at the moment with the athleticism, the line speed, the new kick escort try laws, which has affected kind of the flow of games because there's a lot more area. So there's a lot of stuff happening for our tens, and even for Ireland, for Jack, because we've given away 13 penalties, because our set piece hasn't been as fluid as you would like or as accurate as you like, and because we've been poor in the air, he has so much less ball to play with than historically Ireland have had under Farrell. So if he makes a poor decision, then whether that's to change direction, whether that's to kick early, pass selection to pass front door, back door, it becomes much more scrutinized. Because we're talking about limited enough possessions compared to what we're used to, and then suddenly, like, it'd be, we have to all take into account if Sam gets, if Ireland get their discipline under 10, if we win back some of those area balls, if our set piece is better, and he gets more possession, we also need to take into account, it's probably that's a factor. Plus, Fiji won't be the same level as the All Blacks or Argentina, so you just got to take it all in context.
Based on what you did see from him, Prendergast, I'm talking about, in the 17, 18 minutes he got on last Friday night against Argentina, are you confident that whether or not he actually plays well or doesn't, that he will at least try to be the player he always has been
Yeah,
this Saturday, rather than, we'll say, like, trying to conform to maybe what he thinks Andy Farrell wants and now have to do? Are you confident that he will go out there and play the game that we've seen him play with Leinster and play with the Ireland under 20s, trying those nice little kicks, trying to find creative ways to get out to the edges?
100%. Well, he'll play the plan that Farrell and the coaches have agreed upon, and it's ideal for him to have had a start, because he would have bossed the team all week. I think that the Irish team are going to be better for having this their fourth week in camp. They would have they've had two games to review. They'll have seen where they've fallen short. And to be fair, like, they showed for the first 20 minutes that they were able to bounce into shape. Well, so Sam only has to carry that on, really. It was just for whatever reason, whether it was fatigue or lack of impact off the bench. And then, in fairness, Argentina found a bit of entry points into the game, but Ireland weren't able to continue that. But I would have expected, whether it was Sam, Jack, Kieran this weekend, that it would be better for longer periods. And I think he's good at that. I think that's his area of absolute strength. Is he's composed. He doesn't seem to get spooked by the occasion. And as I would say about Jack and Kieran, because I think what I really like about these three is that they've all shown an ability to be comfortable under pressure. Jack, obviously, the most. Sam, we think he can, and this is a test up level. Obviously, starting, he looked good off the bench on Friday night, and then obviously Frolls, we've only seen bits, really. Particularly we're judging on a second half against South Africa where he showed some real composure. So yeah, I think they all have that. And yeah, that's a great starting point for a 10. There's lots of 10s who'll be more talented than the three lads in terms of speed or power or footwork. Carlos Spencer, gifted, absolutely gifted, but there's definitely doubts about his ability in pressurized situations.
Yeah, or like a Freddie Michalak or something
Yeah,
like
very
that.
easy.
Throw
Yeah, good.
fellas like that in there. Yeah, well, I'm sure it's not going to be the last we're going to be talking about these three fellas anyway. So I might move on to a couple of people we haven't got to speak about too much in the last couple of years. First of all, Cormac Izuchukwu, who's going to make his debut at blindside flanker. Um, he's a fascinating story, isn't he, Bernard? Because like he's 24. He's been on the scene with Ulster and stuff for a few seasons now. But it was really actually only in the final third of last season where all of a sudden he just kind of flourished. Richie Murphy came in interim charge initially of Ulster and obviously liked him straight away and got him in there. Andy Farrell was talking about him today, obviously, and mentioned how they brought him on the Emerging Ireland Tour in 2022. And he said like they liked what they saw, but when they brought him back on the senior tour of South Africa a few months ago. So you're talking about just under 2 years of a difference between the two. He said the transformation was enormous. He was like a new player, just in terms of the game management, the game smarts. He said he had the understanding of what to do around the pitch. He said it was, he was like a new player in the 2 years. So he's had a fascinating rise through the game, and it's great to see him finally getting his shot this weekend.
Yeah, and look, he's been talked about for a while. He had some exposure to the sevens program.
Hmm.
He went back up to Ulster. I think he had a lot of work to do, in terms of technical work.
Because in fairness, he is a fairly late arrival to the game.
Yeah, he's later out of the game. I mean, I think he went to Ross Gray quite late.
Hmm.
Was my understanding. So I don't know if he was Ross Grayson's first year. I think he started in Tullamore.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, and he went into Ross Gray a little bit later. I think maybe for senior cycle. I could be wrong on that, but certainly he wasn't probably as the finished product coming out of school like some of the fellas coming out of other Leicester schools. But I love the fact that his his ability was seen quite early, and I think Anthony Eddy found him. Yeah, was he over in he
He
was
was
over
over in Scotland.
yeah, Kelso and then Newcastle. So like
Hmm.
it's one of those rare in Irish rugby stories where it's not a smooth, clear pathway, and it's brilliant. I love the fact that you can actually still find a way back to starting a test match for Ireland, if you haven't been a Leinster, Munster, Ulster under 18, and in the sub academy and academy, and talent comes through once players, show the commitment and stay in the system. And Richie, I think, look, I spoke to Dan about him maybe 2 years ago, and he was so excited about him. And every time he tried to play him, there was just a little niggle, and then he was under massive pressure. So if you're under massive pressure, do you play an unproven back row? And Richie came in and just gave him confidence. He had a good run injury wise, and with that game time, he just blossomed. So he is very exciting. I mean, I was kind of, I kind of felt a bit for Keen Prendergast here because, you know, he's been in situ as kind of the next
Yeah,
man for a little bit longer, but that's pro sport, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
so I don't begrudge Cormac, but I certainly when I look, I see him, and he's probably hasn't done a lot wrong for Connacht, and now he's Connacht captain.
yeah,
Actually, in fact, he's done a lot right, but
yeah. He's done pretty much everything right.
he's done very right.
Never
But
mind doing a
Cormac,
little wrong. Yeah,
yeah, but the problem is at test level, that sheer athleticism and power can often be a defining factor, and Keane's probably better. Keane is a better line forward. Keane maybe a better leader. But what Farrell wants to have a look at is that power and athleticism. So it's a great call. It's a great call because the sixth position has become incredibly important in Test rugby, and the profile of player you have there is interesting and significant. And he looks to have all the tools to be very very special there. So that's a great call for him, and I'm delighted to see him get his first or get a start for Ireland on Saturday.
and I suppose the key for him on Saturday then is to if he wants to if he wants to impress the way he has for Ulster, he needs to be finding ways to get himself onto the ball. And maybe at Ulster he might be the person or the person players are looking to a little bit more. But at Ireland, obviously, you've got Caelan Darris there. You've got Joe McCarthy's in there. A lot of big, well-known ball carriers. So I suppose does he have? He needs to have the authority going out there to
Yeah,
demand the ball a little bit.
no, he does, and I'd be shocked if Farrell doesn't have a chat with him and say, "Look, you're being picked because of what you do for Ulster every week, and get yourself into the game, and
Mm.
keep getting yourself into the game." And yeah, players tend not to shrivel when they get opportunities from Farrell. They tend to either get better than they look for the problems is, or at least hold their own. So yeah, I'd like to see him, pose himself on the game, and we need him to because Fiji bring a huge amount of dynamism. Even their back row, if it's the same back row that played against Wales, with Deralangi and Sawala at 6 and 7, that's that is a proper challenge.
Mm. The other debutant then obviously, and it was funny as you were talking about Cormac Izuchukwu, you said he obviously hasn't had the cleanest, most traditional route into an Irish team. Well, here comes Gus McCarthy out of Blackrock College, Ireland under 20 captain. He's played 6 games for Leinster and he's forced his way into the Ireland team. Granted, there have been a few injuries along the way, but
Yeah,
this is about as seamless a route into an Irish team as we've seen someone have in the last few years, isn't it?
yeah. No, it is, but this fella's different.
And well deserved for what he's done this
Yeah,
season.
yeah. I saw Gus play at JCT for Blackrock, and I've seen him play SCT for the last, well, obviously not the last 2 years, but before that, part of a winning cup team. I remember him as a captain, and there was a penalty against his team and in Donnybrook, and he just goes over and puts his arm kind of around the referee. Like he seemed to be incredibly comfortable, even at a young age, with responsibility. And obviously we saw him when under 20s. He was excellent, and he got his chance with injuries to Ronan and Dan, and he's taken it. Like he's a very very good rugby player.
Mm.
He's going to have to get bigger and stronger. But he'll carry ball against Fiji, and he'll link, and he'll make his tackles. He's very exciting. He's very exciting. And yeah, he'll be a proper test player in time. And it's great to see, him get a shot here, because I think he'll be around for a long, long time. Obviously, he's probably moved up now to third choice in Leinster. Um, and when Dan comes back, what happens to him there. But certainly for the moment, he's had a very rapid rise. Was on an emerging Ireland tour.
Yeah.
Remember, he came back for the last game because Leinster needed him, I think, and obviously impressed there. But yeah, I think, as I said, I've seen this fella has the full skill set, and it's very similar to Dan in that he just seems to compete and compete and compete. So yeah, again, I have no issue with him starting. I'm delighted for him.
Yeah, and I think the leadership point is a big one because that was something Andy Farrell even brought up as well today that under 20 captaincy.
Mm.
Farrell was saying he can see now why he was an Ireland under 20 skipper because he said he came in as an additional training panelist on their camp over in Portugal, and Farrell basically said he had to keep him on after it because it was just the way he was carrying himself, the way he was going about his business, the way he was imposing himself on training, that he was probably exactly what you want out of a young player. He acted like he belonged there from day one. So it's going to be really
Yeah,
interesting to see how he gets on.
yeah. Just on that, Neil. I mean, look at a coach. A coach is always going to say nice things about someone, getting their first cap. But in fairness to Farrell, there's been players who've come in on training player status in the past, and they've disappeared. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And they haven't been given that. So I wouldn't take that lightly. I think the fact that he's actually getting a start here. I mean, they could have easily, played Ronan again. He hasn't had even game time. Played one of the other hookers, Rob,
Dave
and
Heffernan.
he comes off the bench. Yeah, and yeah, or Heffernan. So that's a big, big statement, I think, of what he has done in emerging Ireland for Leinster, and now obviously in the senior squad.
Um, one of the one of the big improvements needed. Discipline is probably the big one, but one other really, really important one that you highlighted a few couple of days after the Ireland Argentina game is how Ireland are struggling to get to grips with this new um interpretation around the escorts off kicks and how their aerial work hasn't been up to scratch, and particularly now that there's so many more aerial contests between one-on-one aerial contests, and in large part the Irish players are coming out second best in them. That is that is something that that obviously I think needs to be addressed this weekend going forward.
Yeah, it is. A friend of mine, Will Webster, who is coaching MLR in the Free Jacks. He's a bit of time off at the moment, so he's done an analysis comparing the kicking game trends in the World Cup with autumn internationals. And I know the World Cup is it's knockout rugby,
Yeah,
so there's going to be a little bit
makes
more
her.
of a,
Yeah.
yeah, you're going to be a little bit more conservative, but just the trend in Test rugby in terms of actual stats are 8 knockout games from the Rugby World Cup last year versus 8 autumn Tier 1 internationals from this year. 33% less meters kicked. The World Cup average was 917 meters per team. In the autumn, it's been 653 per team. And then 53% more charge downs. There was 11 charge downs last weekend. Obviously, the double charge down for the Peter Steph Toit try was something I haven't seen in a while. And then, but 19% reduction in the number of kicks. So obviously, teams are kicking less, but they're kicking to contest. So that's breaking up the defense, and it's creating more, I suppose, unstructured transitional type attacks, which you can score quicker from. So the Argentinian try, was a contestable regather by them. 2 phases, sweep back, and they score an unbelievable individual try. But it's within 3 phases. The Grant Williams try for South Africa was a regathered kick, and they hurt England in the first phase. So it's creating chaos, it's creating disorganized defense. And yeah, it's been good. I think it's been great for the game. I'm actually delighted with it. You're seeing shorter kickoffs. You're seeing kickoffs down the middle to be contested. Everything has become more of a contest. And Ireland, unfortunately, we just have looked ill at ease with this new try law, because we're not winning as many area collisions as our opponents are. We're not even getting the crumbs on the ground,
Mm.
and it's starving us of kind of momentum and possession, which is obviously something that they will be working on. To be fair, it should be an area where Osborne gives us a little bit more
Yeah.
than Hugo, and that's not knocking Hugo, but he's a bigger man. Um, Mac Mac has been the guy we've sent on a lot of those chases. Just he's been so close to getting some of them back, but hasn't. But again, they obviously believe in his ability there, so he gets another chance to go down that route, and it would be amazing for Jacob. I could be wrong on this, but I don't see Jacob's aerial game being a big part of his strengths. But obviously, with his athleticism, with his height, if he could nail that, because the game is going to go that way, if he could become really good in those aerial contests, and look, that will be an added string to his bow that maybe James Lowe doesn't have, and or any of our wingers who prove that they're excellent in the air.
Stockdale is the interesting one. I really think as well because, like as you said, I think given his size and stuff like that, if you can get him into one-on-one contests in the air, um, if there's two people going for a ball and they arrive there at the same time up in the air,
Yeah,
physics mean he's probably going to win that collision in the air at least, and if he can catch it, all the better. But just in general, it's really interesting to see him back in there as well because he's had to be so patient to get this opportunity back in the team. And I think what sums it up is when the squad was announced, whatever, 4 weeks ago at this stage plus
yeah,
for this section, I saw so many people saying how good it was to see Jacob Stockdale back in the Ireland squad after such a long time out.
yeah.
And I think that summed up the fact that Jacob Stockdale hadn't been out of the Ireland squad since the World Cup. He was there in South Africa. He was there in the Six Nations. And obviously he was there in the warm-up games for the World Cup as well. But he was in that Six Nations squad. He was on that tour of South Africa and
Mm.
just had to stay patient and didn't get his chance. But obviously to some people, out of sight, out of mind, if they hadn't seen him on the pitch or on the bench, it was probably because he was being forgotten about. So fair play to him. He's clearly been doing a huge amount of work behind the scenes. He's been staying patient. He's been, staying diligent in training and stuff like that. And look, this is a huge opportunity for him.
Look, I'm chuffed for him as well. Because he has been out in the wilderness. Obviously, he was the main man for Ireland, and one of the best wingers in the world, and had that little dip, but still, again, I'd love if Farrell can get him back to his best, if Farrell can find a way of bringing him into the game, I think we are lacking out and out finishers really, and that's not like being able to someone be able to go from 40 is going to be really important to Ireland, and he's a different type of winger than James and Mac, and that's fine. You want to have
You want a bit
uh,
of variety, like.
right, exactly. So we don't need to have two the exact same, or three the exact same, or four the exact same. I think Jacob could be a really, really good tool for us and weapon for us. And yeah, I'd be shocked and disappointed if part of our game plan wasn't to get as many touches out on the wing. He's not like Mac or James where he's really comfortable, stepping up at first receiver. In my opinion, I think he's out and out winger, and that's probably why he's fallen out of favor. To be fair, because Farrell does like that winger who's popping up everywhere. But maybe we can also have days where we just want to get that ball to the edge and let him go. And Saturday could be that kind of day.
Yeah, really interested to see how he gets on. One other bit then, down on the bench, Tom Clarkson there going to get his second cap after a very impressive debut actually against Argentina. I would say that was as well as I've seen Tom Clarkson play even for Leinster. And then interestingly, as you mentioned earlier on, Tom O'Toole is down at loosehead. So obviously, like it's looked for a little while like they've wanted to earmark him to switch from tight over to loose this season. Ulster's injuries and then Marty Moore's retirement obviously brought an end to that. But we've spoken at length about the loosehead situation in Ireland and trying to build up the depth there. If Tom O'Toole is a goer at loosehead and can establish himself there, it is a hugely valuable position for Irish rugby to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think we're probably not in a bad place. We aren't in a bad place with Tig and Finley.
Yeah.
But obviously at loosehead side, behind Porter we have Keane, but age profile Tom's has a huge amount of years on Keane. He is a powerful, explosive ball carrier. For me, he still hasn't proved that he's an exceptionally a tight head of scrummaging. But could he do a really good job at loose head and give us kind of you know, um, four props who are the right age profile for the next 2 years, 3 years, have a chance of playing every week for their province. I think obviously it makes sense from that point of view. And he helps you get power and impact onto the bench as well. So yeah, I can see the logic. Now, I am disappointed Jack Boyle's not involved in the 23. I think given we're so short, and like I'm not saying O'Toole, I would have started O'Toole and maybe had Jack Boyle on the bench. To be honest, I would have tried to get another bit of exposure into him, just because I think it's could be such a crisis for us quite quickly.
Mhm.
And you don't really want to be having to move across a tight head like Tom, like really behind Finley. Okay, with Jaeger, but obviously he has a neck injury. Um, there's not a lot the other side either, I think Boyle could become as good a loose head as Tom O'Toole if he got the opportunity. But as I said, there's probably Farrell probably sees there's enough changes and I like to look at the squad. I probably would have just had Boyle in there as well.
Yeah, it is as you mentioned, like moving. moving Tom O'Toole over, and it had been spoken about. It was interesting. John Fogarty was doing media for Ireland during the week, and he was asked about the building the depth and how do you make sure that not only are Ireland going to be able to get the minutes into players, but that the provinces can as well. And he was asked obviously about O'Toole and where does he see him long term, and he says we'll see what we do with Tom O'Toole. I don't see loose heads and tight heads the same way anymore, and I think you probably have seen a little bit more swapping around from the Irish provinces and from the Irish coaching team as well, between tight and loose. And I've always found it really interesting when we were at matches working and we can get a look at the team sheets as they're filled in on the day. And what I've always consistently noticed with Ireland is the amount of their props that are listed as both tight head and loose head is considerably more than their opposition every single week. O'Toole, Beelum, Porter, Healy, Jeremy Lockman, when he's been in there as well, all of them have been listed as tight and loose head. Tadhg Furlong and Ollie Yeager are the only two I haven't seen listed as both. And to be honest, I would say in time they'll probably start getting Ollie Yeager reps over at loosehead as well. Not sure about Tom Clarkson. I didn't get to see last week's team sheet. But then even Cian Healy and Jeremy Lockman have all been listed, and Dave Kilcoyne as well, sorry, has been listed as hooker if needed. Because they don't want to end up in that situation that Italy were in at the Aviva Stadium a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, it's ideal. It's
obviously,
smart.
I mean, obviously, you're not going to be swapping them and chopping them and changing them around every week, but
No, but
it's
yeah,
it's just preparing the contingencies.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's probably one of the ones where people talk about the South Africans and being innovators and the 6-7-1s and stuff like that. We were one of the first, and we saw it come to fruition or to help us in Scotland at the time when we didn't have to drop down a man. And you see more doing it. I think the Vincent Cock play loosehead last week for a little while. Yeah, so others are starting to get on line with it, and that's we need to be that smart. Like we can't afford to lose a game because we can't cover a front row injury or a red card or whatever properly. So it is good, but I still think I think John Fogarty mentioned, we spoke the last couple of weeks about not a lot being done to fix that depth of props or
In
lack
the
of
long term, yeah.
long term, and the RFU have obviously made a decision there to bring somebody in, and I admire that. I think my understanding is Seamus Toomey from Blackrock College, who has worked with some of the Gus McCarthy and at hooker, but also there's two tight heads have come out of Blackrock in the last couple of years, McCarthy and Smith, who look like they have the ability to come through. But also, it's not just about Blackrock; it's about how can we find the next special Cian Healy, or
and for people who aren't aware, like this role, so Fogarty was kind of filling people in on the details on it. I think he actually might have even shot the gun. It hasn't officially been announced, but he announced
maybe it's not Seamus Toomey, but I heard it.
He announced it on Tuesday, I think, ahead of everyone else. But basically, what they're doing is they're bringing in a coach who can go around the country and work with the national talent squads, around the players from the national talent squad around the country, specifically the front rows, with the aim being they want to bridge the gap between the 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are still playing in school, where there are restrictions on how much you can drive in a scrum, kind of meter and a half, and bridge the gap between that and obviously when they come into under 20s and it's a free for all and it's full scrum rules or full scrum laws. And I suppose trying to identify at an early age who are these really, really strong prospects, not just at loosehead prop, but at hooker and front row as well.
Yeah. No, look at it. I jumped the gun myself, so I recommend Seamus Toomey. He'd be a great guy for it. Greg Feek, part of his job and remit was he coached a crop of prop fanatics who are coaching and willing to work in the provinces and the clubs with the underage, and they used to get in guys like Mike Ross who come in and they'd be down scrummaging in a conference room in a hotel on a Sunday. And it was brilliant, and I know people who went through that coaching course, specialist prop front row coaching course, and they found it so beneficial, and were energized to go back to their clubs or rep teams and actually take on responsibility to try and create an aligned scrummaging philosophy as such. And it went all the way from the top down and bottom back. And that was very much a New Zealand thing. And I think someone like Toomey and if it's him and Foggs, making sure that they're looking for the same things, they're looking for the same, they're giving the same messages, will help those young props when they step up to whether it's emerging Ireland, whether it's or Ireland in the future. And it's a real positive investment by the RFU. And then look, I know England have created this front five club,
Mm.
uh, where they've identified, their high potential front five players, and have created individual development plans for them, specialist coaching, etc. So it's definitely something that's so important, and they don't necessarily just come along by chance. Obviously you have to have freak genetics, but there's a lot of work that needs to go into actually getting them to the level where they can compete with the best in the world. And yeah, I think it's a positive step by the RFU, and yeah, full credit to them for investing in that.
Um, Final point on the Ireland Fiji game. I will ask you about Leo Cullen's contract just finally after that. But final point on this game, on Fiji in general. I mean, they they have shown themselves in the last 12, 18 months that they are becoming a more and more consistent side. I know they lost to Portugal at the World Cup, bizarrely, but they have pulled off some pretty big results over the last 12, 18 months. They've beaten England, beat the Wallabies obviously at the World Cup last year, beat Wales a couple of weeks ago. Now I know Wales are in dire straits as well, but beat Japan in the Pacific Nations Cup and have been were comfortable enough during that. They are a side now that are a lot more consistent than they would have been in previous years.
Yeah, they are for sure. And you can forget the first game against Scotland where
Yeah,
they
that
didn't
was the
have
B team.
access. Yeah, they're the B team. So we saw them against Wales. Um, Very exciting at times, and actually kind of played the percentages when they needed to as well. I thought Caleb Muntz was excellent. They had a 20-minute red card for Draga. And yeah, lots to like. I think we've heard Nakavalu, who's the captain, speak out against the Fijian rugby union, and players were late getting paid their bonuses and things like that. But I think they've really galvanized behind Mick the Kick Byrne, who's obviously a very experienced coach, who's gone in there as head coach. And yeah, look at they're the very dangerous side. Like it's a fascinating game for Ireland because there's points and tries in this Fijian team. Um, they have the muscle and they have the fitness level. They have probably confidence after that Wales win. They love touring. Yeah, it's a like this for me. This has been the best November I remember, where we've had four quality teams
Mm.
come here, and no gimme, you, you know, and Scotland had Portugal, England have Japan. We have four test matches.
Yeah, big time. So that is 3 on Saturday afternoon, live commentary on RT Radio 1. Last point as well, obviously, in terms of the provinces, there was a bit of big news yesterday for Leinster. Leo Cullen has, I mean, it had kind of been out there for, it feels like a couple of months now, but it was officially confirmed, a new contract for Leo Cullen at Leinster, a 2-year deal. Strangely, in some quarters didn't go down that warmly
Yeah.
among some Leinster fans. Is this a case though of, I mean, like, have Leinster fans been a little bit spoilt down the last few years? If anything, of they're constantly getting to finals. No, they haven't got over the line, but is it a bit of a victim of their own success?
Yeah, look, when you're that in that many finals and semi-finals, there's an expectation there to win, and that won't be lost on Leo or any of the players. Yeah, I think I just came back from an event where he spoke, and Jacques Nienaber spoke, just the two of them on stage together, and like I I think it's the right move by Leinster. I think you've got Leo, who is excellent at what he does, and part of why he's excellent is he gets people in. that will give the players, the right technical, tactical motivation, whatever he needs that he feels, there's a gap there. And whether it was going off and getting Stuart Lancaster, or it was going to get Rob McBride, or going and getting Jacques Nienaber and Tyler Blindale. One thing you can't say is despite Leo's longevity, is that there hasn't been different voices, quality voices there to make those players better. The Irish team have benefited from it. Leinster in recent years haven't got the silverware that their form and their win percentage early in the season would lead you to believe is going to come, but they keep coming back. They keep coming back, and they went. If you think about it, if you didn't know the timeline, you would have said they lose to Toulouse, they lose to the Bulls, and they go and sign R.G. Snyman and Geordie Barrett. That's how I would see the timeline if I didn't know how it played out. But it actually already made a decision to go get those before that, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I think that shows me that it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. They actually felt the squad needed just a little bit of help, and that's a lot of help, to be fair. A lot of help from and Rabba as well, and his influence with some of those younger props. So they've did what we did in 2009 at Leinster, is they went out and got our version of East of the Sea with Rocky Elsom and TJ Van Linde to just get him over the line. And once they get over the line once, okay, I think Toulouse are a generational side, but I also think Leinster can be. I think Toulouse and Leinster can go head to head in Europe, for the next 5 or 6 years. But I think Leinster need to get over the line once, and I believe the stability and the leadership of Leo, because he's willing to change up his coaching staff, is a real positive for them, because it's a luxury to have the players he has, but it also takes a lot of management. And both Leinster and Ireland have benefited from his stability and his reassurance and his calmness to kind of make the right decisions for blue and green rather than for Leo. And I think that's not mutually exclusive. I think you will get to a stage, and probably this year, where those things that are going to benefit Leinster short term, long term, and Ireland short term, long term, will also benefit Leinster fans by having silverware. So yeah, I think it's the right move. And to be honest, I was blown away by both of them. Nienaber, as the passion he has for the level of detail, it just was funny. He's now having a little look at Bristol, who they play in 2 weeks' time. They play Ulster next week, and I did some stuff on Bristol because they just for myself ages ago, but I remembered a few things that I really liked about Pat Lamb's attack, and it's actually, if anyone has time, have a watch some of how Bristol play. It's different than everybody else, and their attack is amazing, is really, really enjoyable to watch. But you just mention a little moment in a match, and he's all over it, and then telling you why that happened and stuff, in and around it. Just a very, very, very good coach, and the fact is, if you think about Leinster's defence this year, it's been much better. It's been much better because he's had a pre-season, and players are loving him, and he's a winner. So, and I think also he'll help Leo culturally as well. Just with a different way of looking at things, and that has to be good for players like James Ryan or Ty Furlong or Ross Byrne, who've been there a long time. Having someone of that ilk come in. And Leo doesn't have any ego. Leo lets him coach and do his thing. Lets him, dictate and guide on culture and how they operate. I think it's a good mix. Yeah, it's good.
When you were talking to them, did they have any word? Did they got an update on how Geordie Barrett is? He's missing this weekend.
Leo said when he saw him getting injured, he was hiding behind the couch, going, "Oh, please, please, no, I don't think it's too bad. I don't think it's too bad. He's here next week. So yeah, look, it's a short-term deal, but again, whether he's off the bench, or whether he starts, what a player to be able to bring in for the important part of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all comes together. Berners, that's where I'll leave you go. You've given us enough tonight. It's been a pleasure having you on as always, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again soon. Enjoy the match at the weekend.
Thanks, Neil. See you there.